My name is Isabel Price, and I'm 31 years old. 2 years ago, my fiancé Daniel left me for my cousin Rachel. He didn't just leave me, he moved on with breathtaking speed, as if our 3-year relationship had meant nothing. 6 months after our breakup, Daniel and Rachel were engaged. 1 year after that, they were planning their wedding. I was not invited. Obviously. But I was talked about constantly. The family scandal, the awkward elephant in every room, the ex-fiancée who'd been replaced by her own cousin. Some family members sided with me, appalled by the betrayal. Others sided with Rachel, claiming you can't help who you fall in love with and telling me to move on. I did move on. I built a new life, healed from the betrayal, and found peace. But I also did something else. I wrote a letter. A detailed, truthful, devastating letter about who Daniel really was, and what he'd been hiding from Rachel, from everyone, during our relationship. I sent that letter to their wedding. Not to Rachel. Not to Daniel. But to the priest officiating the ceremony, with specific instructions that it be read aloud during the part of the service where objections are traditionally voiced. The priest, Father Michael, was someone I knew from childhood. Someone who valued truth and transparency. Someone who'd baptized both Rachel and me. Someone I knew would read that letter if I asked him to, especially once he understood what was in it. Their wedding was beautiful. Rachel looked radiant in a dress that cost more than most people's cars. Daniel stood at the altar looking confident and happy. 200 guests filled the church, including most of our extended family. Everything was perfect. Until Father Michael opened my letter and began reading it aloud. "Before we proceed," he said, his voice carrying through the church, "I've been asked to share a letter that was sent to me this week. The sender requested that it be read at this moment in the ceremony. It's addressed to Rachel Thompson, and it comes from her cousin, Isabel Price." The church went silent. Rachel's face showed confusion. Daniel's showed horror. He'd gone. Completely pale, like he knew exactly what was coming. Father Michael began reading. "Dear Rachel, I want to start by saying I don't hate you. I did, for a while, but I've moved past that. What you and Daniel did was painful, but I've healed. However, there are some things you should know about the man you're about to marry. Things he never told you. Things I think you deserve to know before you legally bind yourself to him for life." Rachel looked at Daniel. He was shaking his head slightly, trying to signal her not to listen. But Father Michael continued. "During our relationship, Daniel told you he'd been faithful to me throughout our 3 years together. That's not true. He cheated on me at least 4 times that I know of, possibly more. I have the messages, the receipts from hotels, the testimony of friends who saw him with other women. I never confronted him because I was afraid of losing him. Ironic, considering I lost him anyway, to you." The church erupted in whispers. Rachel's hands were trembling. Daniel tried to step forward, but Father Michael raised his hand. "Please, let me finish. Rachel, you also believe that Daniel makes 6 figures at his job. He doesn't. He was fired 8 months ago for embezzling company funds. He's currently under investigation, and there's a strong possibility he'll face criminal charges. The money he's been spending on your wedding, on your honeymoon, on the new house you think you're buying together, that's credit card debt and loans he's taken out in both your names without telling you. You're about to marry someone who's financially drowning and has been lying to you about it for months. Before I tell you how this letter demolished not just a wedding but exposed years of lies and manipulation, make sure you're subscribed, so you never miss stories like this. If you've ever been betrayed by someone close to you and had to watch them move on without consequences, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and whether you think exposing someone's lies at their wedding is justified revenge or going too far. Your perspective matters to me. Now let me take you back to where this betrayal began. I met Daniel when I was 25. He was charming, attentive, successful. Or so he seemed. He worked in finance, drove a nice car, took me to expensive restaurants. Within 6 months we were dating seriously. Within a year we were talking about marriage. Within 2 years he'd proposed. I thought I'd found my person. The one I'd spend my life with. The one who'd chosen me and would keep choosing me. I was wrong. The problems started small. Daniel would be vague about where he'd been, who he'd been with. He'd get defensive when I asked questions. He'd accuse me of being jealous or paranoid if I expressed concerns. "You don't trust me," he'd say. That's a problem, Isabel. A healthy relationship requires trust. So I trusted him. Even when my instincts screamed otherwise. Even when I found receipts for hotels in cities he'd claimed to visit for business, but where his company didn't have offices. Even when he'd disappear for hours without explanation. I convinced myself I was being paranoid. That successful men have busy lives. That I was lucky someone like him had chosen me. 2 years into our engagement, my cousin Rachel moved back to town. She'd been living in California, but her job relocated her to our city. She needed a place to stay. Temporarily while finding an apartment, so I offered our guest room. Daniel and I had just bought a condo together. We had space. Rachel was family. It seemed natural to help. She moved in for 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks became 2 months. And during those 2 months, I watched my fiancé fall in love with my cousin. It wasn't immediate. It started with small things. Daniel offering to help Rachel find apartments. Them having coffee together in the mornings before I left for work. Inside jokes I wasn't part of. Glances that lasted too long. I told myself I was imagining it. Rachel was my cousin. Daniel was my fiancé. They wouldn't do that to me. But they did. I came home early from work one day, about 6 weeks into Rachel's stay. Heard sounds coming from our bedroom. Opened the door to find Daniel and Rachel in bed together. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I couldn't even process it at first. Just stood there staring while they scrambled to cover themselves, to explain, to make excuses. Isabel, I'm so sorry, Rachel said, crying. We didn't mean for this to happen. We fell in love. You can't control who you love. How long? I managed to ask. 3 weeks, Daniel admitted. It just happened. I'm sorry, I didn't want to hurt you. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of them sneaking around in my home. 3 weeks of betrayal while I worked to pay half the mortgage on the condo we'd bought together. 3 weeks of them lying to my face every single day. Get out, I said. Both of you, get out right now. Rachel moved out that day. Daniel tried to stay, tried to work things out, claimed what happened with Rachel was a mistake and he still loved me. I kicked him out too. Called off the engagement. Told my family what had happened. The fallout was immediate and brutal. My parents were appalled. Rachel's parents made excuses. She'd been going through a hard time. She'd been lonely. It wasn't entirely her fault. Some family members blamed Daniel entirely. Others suggested I must have done something to push him away. Nobody seemed to want to acknowledge the simple truth. 2 people I loved had betrayed me in the worst possible way. Daniel and Rachel didn't stay apart long. Within 2 weeks of moving out, they were officially dating. Within 2 months, they were living together. Within 6 months, they were engaged. The speed of it was breathtaking and insulting. Like our 3 years together had been nothing. Like the relationship he'd built with me could be discarded and replaced without a second thought. Rachel sent me a text after their engagement. I know this is hard for you, but I hope you can be happy for us. Daniel and I are really in love. This is real, Isabel. I hope someday you'll understand. I didn't respond. What could I say? That watching her build a life with my ex-fiancé was torture? That every family gathering where they appeared together felt like salt and still open wounds? That I'd lost not just my partner but also my cousin, and with her, half my family who'd chosen to maintain relationships with the new couple rather than side with me? I focused on healing. Went to therapy. Rebuilt my life. Started dating again. Found a new job that paid better and fulfilled me more. Slowly, painfully, I moved forward. But I also watched. Watched Daniel and Rachel plan their perfect wedding. Watched them post about their perfect relationship on social media. Watched Rachel show off her engagement ring, larger than the one Daniel had given me, and talk about how, when you know you know. And I noticed things. Things Rachel couldn't see because she was too caught up in the fairy tale. Daniel's job situation changing. Him posting less about work, being vague when family asked about his career. I had mutual connections at his company who told me he'd been fired for financial misconduct. That there was an internal investigation. That criminal charges were possible. Daniel taking Rachel on expensive trips funded by credit cards. The new car he bought her. The down payment on a house that seemed beyond what his stated income could afford. I started digging. Not out of jealousy, I was genuinely over Daniel by this point, but out of concern for Rachel. Despite everything, she was still my cousin. And I could see he was setting her up for financial ruin. What I found was worse than I'd expected. Daniel had been fired from his finance job 8 months earlier. Not for a small mistake, but for embezzling client funds. The company was deciding whether to press charges or handle it internally. He'd been scrambling to cover his tracks ever since. He'd taken out credit cards in Rachel's name without her knowledge, used her excellent credit to fund their lifestyle, was drowning in debt while maintaining the appearance of success. He'd also never stopped cheating. I found evidence of at least 2 other women he'd been seeing while engaged to Rachel. Hotel receipts, messages, the same patterns I'd seen during our relationship. Rachel had no idea about any of it. She believed his lies completely. Believed they were building a secure future together. Believed he'd changed, that their love was different, that what had happened between us was my fault somehow. If you're already invested in this story and dying to know how that letter ended, smash that like button right now. Because what I'm about to tell you changed everything, not just for their wedding, but for Rachel's entire understanding of the man she was about to marry. Drop a comment. Would you have sent that letter? Or would you have let her figure it out on her own? I wrestled with whether to tell Rachel. On one hand, she'd betrayed me. She'd chosen him over family loyalty. Part of me wanted her to suffer the consequences of that choice. On the other hand, she was walking into a marriage with someone who was lying to her about fundamental things. Financial fraud, infidelity, criminal investigations. These weren't small issues. These were life-destroying problems that would become her problems the moment they said I do. I decided to write the letter. Not as revenge, though I'd be lying if I said there wasn't satisfaction in exposing Daniel's lies, but as a final act of family loyalty. Rachel deserved to know who she was marrying. What she did with that information was up to her. But I didn't send the letter to Rachel directly. She would have dismissed it as jealous ex-fiancé nonsense. She would have shown it to Daniel, who would have spun some story to explain everything away. Instead, I sent it to Father Michael, the priest who'd known both of us since childhood, who'd confirmed both of us in the Catholic Church, who valued honesty and transparency, who I knew would read that letter if I asked him to, especially once he understood what was in it. I included everything. The cheating during our relationship, backed by screenshots of messages and hotel receipts. The job loss and embezzlement investigation, backed by documentation from my connections at his company. The credit card fraud, backed by credit reports I'd obtained through means I won't detail here. The ongoing infidelity, backed by more messages and evidence from the women he'd been seeing. I also included a personal note to Father Michael. Father, I know this is an unusual request, but Rachel is about to marry someone who's been systematically lying to her about who he is and what he's done. She deserves to know the truth before she legally binds herself to him. I'm not asking you to stop the wedding. That's her choice to make. I'm asking you to give her the information she needs to make an informed choice. Please read this during the ceremony, at the point where objections are traditionally voiced. She won't listen if it comes from me directly. But she might listen if it comes from you in front of witnesses with evidence she can't dismiss. Isabel, I mailed it a week before the wedding. Wasn't sure if Father Michael would actually do it. Priests have rules about confidentiality, about not causing scenes. But I hoped his sense of moral obligation would override his preference for peace and quiet. The wedding day arrived. I wasn't there, obviously. But I had friends in attendance who'd agreed to update me on what happened. The ceremony started normally. Rachel walked down the aisle looking beautiful. Daniel stood at the altar, looking confident. Readings were read. Songs were sung. Everything proceeded according to plan. Then came the moment for objections. Traditionally, this is when the priest says, if anyone objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace. It's usually just a formality. Nobody actually objects anymore. But Father Michael didn't use the traditional words. Instead, he said before we proceed, I've been asked to share a letter that was sent to me this week. My friend texted me, OMG, he's doing it. Father Michael began reading. Rachel's expression went from confused to shocked to horrified as he went through each revelation. Daniel tried multiple times to interrupt, but Father Michael kept reading. When he finished, the church was silent. Rachel stood at the altar, her hands trembling, staring at Daniel. Is this true? She asked quietly. Daniel tried to lie. Baby, no, she's just jealous. She's trying to ruin our day. Is it true? Rachel's voice was louder now. Some of it might be technically accurate, but taken out of context. Did you cheat on her? Did you lose your job? Did you take out credit cards in my name? Daniel couldn't meet her eyes. Rachel turned to Father Michael. Is there evidence? Did she include evidence in the letter? Father Michael nodded. Extensive documentation, which I'm obligated to share with you if you'd like to see it. I'd like to see it. Father Michael handed her the folder. Rachel flipped through pages, bank statements, credit reports, messages, hotel receipts. Her face went from horror to fury. She looked at Daniel. You've been lying to me about everything. Rachel, we can talk about this later privately. No. We're talking about it now. In front of everyone. Since apparently that's the only way to get truth from you. Daniel's mother stood up from the front row. Rachel dear, maybe you should take a moment to calm down. Calm down? I just found out my fiancé is a cheating, embezzling liar who's drowning in debt and committed fraud using my identity. How exactly should I calm down about that? The church erupted. People talking over each other. Daniel's family defending him. Rachel's family demanding answers. My friend texted, "This is absolute chaos." Rachel pulled off her engagement ring. Threw it at Daniel. We're done. Rachel, please, we're done. The wedding's off. Get away from me. She turned to leave, wedding dress trailing behind her. Her bridesmaids scrambled to follow. Daniel tried to go after her, but Rachel's father blocked him. I think you've done enough, her father said. You're not welcome at our house. Don't contact our daughter. We'll be in touch through lawyers about the fraud and the debt you've saddled her with. Daniel stood at the altar looking shell-shocked. His parents were yelling at Father Michael for reading the letter. Guests were leaving in confusion and excitement, already pulling out. Phones to spread the gossip. The perfect wedding had imploded. And it was all because of my letter. My friend called me afterward. Isabel, that was the most insane thing I've ever witnessed. Rachel walked out. The wedding's off. Everyone's talking about it. Some people are mad at you for sending the letter, but most people are saying Rachel deserved to know the truth. I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Satisfaction that Daniel had been exposed. Relief that Rachel had escaped before legally binding herself to him. Guilt about disrupting the wedding so dramatically. And underneath it all, a sense of closure. This chapter was finally over. Rachel called me 2 days later. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity. Isabel da. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying. I need to talk to you, okay? I'm so sorry. For everything. For Daniel. For betraying you. For not believing you when you tried to warn me that he was bad news. I never tried to warn you. You did though. Just by the way you looked at me when I told family we were together. I saw it in your face. You knew he'd do the same thing to me that he did to you. And I ignored it. I thought we were different. I thought he'd changed. Rachel, I lost you for nothing. I destroyed our relationship for a man who was lying to me about everything. Who was using me. Who was going to destroy my credit and my finances and probably cheat on me throughout our marriage. And you saved me from that. You sent that letter knowing I'd probably hate you for it, and you did it anyway. Okay, before I tell you how this ended, and whether Rachel and I were able to rebuild any kind of relationship after everything that happened, I need to know something. Was sending that letter the right move? Would you have done it? Or would you have let her marry him and face the consequences? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're still watching, hit that like button because the resolution might surprise you. I sent the letter because you're still my cousin, I said carefully. Despite everything. And I couldn't watch you walk into a marriage with someone who was going to destroy your life. Even if you hated me for it. I don't hate you. I hate myself for what I did to you. For throwing away our relationship for someone who wasn't even real. We talked for 2 hours. About Daniel. About the betrayal. About the wedding implosion. About the debt she'd discovered she was now responsible for thanks to his fraud. About the embezzlement investigation that might implicate her as well since they'd been living together and sharing finances. I've hired a lawyer, she said. To separate myself from Daniel's financial and legal problems. It's going to be expensive and complicated. I'm sorry. Don't be. This is my fault. I made these choices. I wish I'd listened to everyone who told me this was a bad idea. I wish I'd seen through him before getting this deep. He's good at lying. He lied to me for 3 years. He would have kept lying to you for however long you stayed together. That letter saved me. I know it seems dramatic having it read at the wedding. But if you'd sent it to me privately, I would have shown Daniel. He would have explained it away. I would have believed him. The only reason I took it seriously was because it came from Father Michael, in front of witnesses, with evidence I couldn't dismiss. I wasn't trying to ruin your wedding. I was trying to give you information. You did both. And I'm grateful for both. Rachel and I didn't become close again overnight. Too much damage, too much hurt. But we started rebuilding. Slow lunches every few months. Honest conversations about what had happened. Her genuine apologies and my gradual forgiveness. She paid back the credit card debt Daniel had accumulated in her name. Testified in the embezzlement investigation, which resulted in criminal charges against Daniel. He eventually pled guilty and received probation plus restitution payments. The scandal destroyed Daniel's reputation. He moved to another state trying to escape the gossip. Last I heard, he was working retail and living with his parents, his finance career over, his ability to manipulate women into relationships severely limited by his criminal record and ruined credit. Rachel is doing better now. She's in therapy, processing the betrayal and manipulation. She's dating again, more carefully this time. She's rebuilding trust with family members who'd felt betrayed by her relationship with Daniel. And she's grateful for the letter. You could have let me marry him, she said recently over coffee. You could have let me find out the hard way, after I was legally bound to him and liable for his debts and legal problems. That would have been justified revenge for what I did to you. But you didn't do that. You warned me, even though it cost you the satisfaction of watching me suffer. I didn't want you to suffer. I wanted you to know the truth. That's the difference between you and Daniel. You told me the truth even when it would have been easier to lie. He lied even when the truth would have been kinder. That's why you're the person I'm having coffee with now, and he's the person I'm testifying against in court. 3 years after that imploded wedding, my life has moved forward. I'm engaged to someone new, someone trustworthy, honest, and completely different from Daniel. Rachel will be at my wedding. Not as a bridesmaid, we're not there yet, but as a guest, which is more than I thought would be possible. I don't regret sending the letter. Some people in my family still think it was cruel, that I should have let Rachel figure things out on her own. But most people, including Rachel herself, agree that she deserved to know the truth before making a lifelong commitment to someone who was fundamentally dishonest. The wedding implosion was dramatic. Maybe more dramatic than necessary. But sometimes truth is dramatic. Sometimes exposing lies requires public moments because private warnings get ignored. And sometimes saving someone from their own bad decisions requires being the villain in their story for a while. I was the jealous ex who ruined Rachel's wedding. Until she realized. I was the cousin who saved her from marrying a criminal who would have destroyed her life. Your ex moving on with someone close to you is one of the deepest betrayals. But watching them build a relationship on lies and deception is different from watching them build something real. When you know the truth could save someone pain, even someone who hurt you, speaking up isn't revenge, it's complicated compassion. If you made it this far, you understand what it's like to watch someone you once loved lie to someone else, while everyone pretends everything's fine. Hit that subscribe button for more stories about people who chose truth over easy revenge. Drop a comment about whether exposing someone's lies publicly is justified or if private warnings are always the better path. Your perspective on this matters. Hit like if you believe some truths need to be told publicly because private warnings get dismissed. And share this with someone who needs to hear that being betrayed doesn't mean you become cruel. Sometimes it means you save the person who replaced you from making the biggest mistake of their life. Remember, the people who betray you often betray others in the same ways. And when you know someone is walking toward disaster with a liar, telling them the truth isn't revenge, it's honesty, even when honesty hurts everyone involved. Until next time, this is Isabel reminding you that my fiancé left me for my cousin, and I could have let her marry him without warning her. I could have watched silently while he destroyed her life the way he'd tried to destroy mine. But I sent that letter instead. And when the priest read it aloud at their wedding and she walked out mid-ceremony, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt relieved. Because some truths are more important than revenge. And some people deserve to be saved, even from themselves.